Okay, so now I want to talk about 9/11 and the war on terror. This is Donald Rumsfeld, and after 9/11, America decided that they need to take offensive. They need to hunt down the terrorists and control their behavior. And so they start to arrest terrorists. But then bad things start to happen, okay? So this is a prison in Iraq, Abu Ghraib, where they arrested terrorists, and they were doing strange things to these terrorists, as you can see. Okay, so this is pretty disgusting stuff. And this was leaked to CBS News, and CBS News showed all this. Okay? All right? So it's pretty disgusting. So now the question then is, why is this happening? And there have been different explanations. The military says, these are soldiers who went crazy, and they went rogue. So we've arrested them, and we punished them. But then they discovered that they're actually psychologists who were responsible for this program. So these are two psychologists, and they were sued by the victims. And during the court testimony, we discovered that they were paid $80 million by the CIA to develop this program. So what is going on here? This is not something that happened randomly. It was designed by the government, by the CIA. So why is this happening? Well, they call it enhanced interrogation. Okay? This is a book, The Dark Side, by Jane Mayer, who's a fantastic reporter. I highly recommend this book. She's a reporter for New Yorker and spent years looking into why this torture happened. And what she argued is it's an experiment to change the mentality of these terrorists. And the theory is called learned helplessness. You can basically take someone like Ra, okay, the virtuous hero, and turn him to Osiris through certain techniques. Okay? Remember, Ra, the identity is the virtuous hero who fights Apophis every day. Osiris is a person who gets tortured by Set every day, okay? So the goal of this experiment is to turn Ra into Osiris. And the person who developed learned helplessness is also the person who developed a new theory called positive psychology. His name is Martin Seligman. Okay, so positive psychology that you're learning in school is brainwashing. Okay? All right. So that's a theory, and it's a great theory, and this is what most people believe. The problem, though, is it doesn't actually work. Because after the CIA started to torture all these prisoners, they became ISIS, Islamic State. ISIS is the name of what? The Egyptian goddess who saved Osiris, right? And who fathered Horus. Do you think it's a coincidence? Maybe not. Okay? Maybe not. So ISIS is this fanatical death cult that are terrorists who go around the Middle East and kill a lot of people. Okay? You might have seen their videos where they do a lot of nasty stuff, like beheading people. Okay? So what a lot of people discovered is that there's actually a direct connection between, ISIS and this torture. In fact, in many academics, so for example, Jeremy Suri and Andrew Thompson, they discovered that many of the ISIS fighters the US is currently combating in the Middle East deepened their extremism during the time in prisons, controlled by the United States. So it's really strange. The United States thought that they were going to use the psychology to turn Ra, the terrorist, into Osiris, the citizen. But they ended up doing the reverse. Osiris became Ra. How stupid were they? Right? And these guys were paid $80 million to be this stupid. Okay? So this is Human Rights First, an organization that started to interview these prisoners of America, okay? And what they discovered is these prisoners told them, okay? Their testimony shows that ISIS recruitment is still ongoing, unchecked by Egyptian authorities, and fueled a substantial part of the torture and other abuse that pervade Egyptian prisons. So it's really strange how these prisons are almost training ISIS terrorists. What's going on? Well, let's go back to Guantanamo Bay, okay? The answer lies in these prisons and what they're doing there. So most of these prisoners were so traumatized, they forgot what happened. But we have one man, Abu Zubaydah, who remembered what happened. He's a Saudi citizen who was captured. And he told us what they were doing to him, okay? So we're going to go through his story. And you tell me what the story reminds you of. So they basically were force-feeding him, torturing him, strangling him. Then they put him in a coffin and they drowned him. Then they used a power drill to do this to him, okay? To basically cut him up. Whoa! Do you guys remember the story? Oh, and also sexual humiliation, right? Where they had a woman who tried to seduce him. Also, guys, right? Do you guys see this? What is the story, guys? What is the story? It's a story of Egypt. This is what they did to Pharaoh 5,000 years ago. It's the same story. It's the same script. In other words, what they're really doing is they're trying to turn these people who are mostly innocent into terrorists. They're trying to turn these people into drones that they can program and unleash in the Middle East. That's the real goal. Okay? So it wasn't that the experiment failed, it worked. ISIS is an American creation, designed to create as much chaos as possible in the Middle East. Let me ask you this question. If you really wanted to get information from these terrorists, what's the best way to do that? Pay them money. Be friends with them. Be nice to them. Take them out to dinner. Okay? We have lots of evidence to suggest that if you just be nice to these people, they'll tell you everything they know. You don't have to torture them. You torture them because you're trying to turn them into secret weapons to be unleashed in the world. Okay? All right? So, 5,000 years ago, they were doing this to Pharaoh. And now they figure out how to do this to anyone using drugs, using torture, using ritual abuse. Okay? So all these ISIS fighters, they're robots controlled by the American military. They're drones, they're human drones used. Okay, why is this important? It's important because 5,000 years ago, trying to control the Pharaoh was first and foremost about social control. So there's a program called MK Ultra, started in the 1950s and 60s, led by a chemist called Sidney Gottlieb, okay? And the point of MK Ultra was to figure out how to brainwash people. And for the longest time, this was considered a conspiracy theory. But a few years ago, the CIA, the US government, admitted we actually did this. But not anymore, okay? We did this before, but not today. Not today, okay? Okay, so if you're curious, there are lots of documents, government documents on the internet that you can read, okay? But the MK Ultra was a program designed to test the effects of drugs and brainwashing on innocent American citizens, especially children. Okay. So some of the documents are now public, and guys, just so you know, most of the documentation, the most sensitive documentation, was destroyed by the participants. So we only have a few of the documents. But some of the things that they were doing was brainwashing, okay, using drugs, hypnosis, in order to control people's minds, okay, interrogation techniques. they were working with foreign intelligence officials to conduct mind control research. Okay, so the things you couldn't do in the United States legally, they were doing in Egypt, which created what, guys? Probably Al-Qaeda, okay? They were also doing things that were really weird. For example, they started a brothel. And so if you came to the brothel, they gave you drugs, okay? Like LSD. And they were trying to figure out how to control your mind. But they won't do this to most people, right? Okay, well, I'll show you later on. You'll be surprised. Okay, so this is Sidney Gottlieb, and he was the man responsible for MK Ultra. And he's a chemist, okay? So he's trying to figure out how to use these drugs to control the population. And you're like, well, this is just weird. And if you talk to experts, like, well, the MK Ultra results were terrible. But then ask yourself this: what is social media? What is, if you feel bad and you go to a doctor and the doctor gives you drugs, how do they know these drugs work? Okay, so MK Ultra did work, but they hide the fact of its effectiveness. And the results of MK Ultra have spread throughout society. Guys, good news. You're now the pharaoh, okay? Each and every one of you are now the pharaoh. Congratulations. Something really funny about psychologists is this. Sorry, why is this happening? Okay, you may not know this, but psychologists have been known to have a greater propensity to have mental illness than most people. Your psychologist is literally more screwed up in the brain than you are. Okay, you don't believe me? Do some research. And this is really weird because if you went to a doctor and the doctor was fat and unhealthy, that'd be problematic, right? Also, I have not met anyone who's gotten better psychologically after seeing a psychologist. You guys might have, and I'm sure there are lots and lots of people who benefited from seeing a psychologist, but I myself have never met anyone or seen anyone who's benefited from seeing a psychologist. And that's really weird because if you break your leg and you go to a doctor and like for years and years your leg doesn't get better, well, that's a problem, right? Okay, so something to keep in mind, okay? So, any questions? Questions, guys? So I know this was a lot to take in, and we'll be expanding these topics as we move on, okay? But some key takeaways is all societies are first and foremost concerned with social control. And what's really interesting is who we are as a human being has not changed in thousands of years. So that the way they were controlling the Pharaoh in Egypt 5,000 years ago is really the way that they control us today. And I'll show you how as we discuss the mass media, okay, and mass education and mass psychology. Okay, we have a question here.
In that case, shouldn't the social media be controlled by government? Like, for example, why Twitter or say X could be a personal thing owned by Elon Musk?
Okay, that's a great question. Okay, so if it's true that social media is a mechanism for social control, why are they being controlled by private citizens who've made billions of dollars doing it, right? Okay, well, let me ask you this question. Who built the internet? Do you guys know who built the internet? The US military, right? Because the internet is controlled by these cables that run around the world. Who built all these cables? The US military. Do you think they would do this for free? Why would they do this? Okay? So Twitter, Facebook, that's the public face, okay? But what people forget is behind Facebook and Twitter are all this infrastructure that's being controlled and protected by the US military. So why would the military do this? Okay? Right? And again, this is a class about speculation, about theories, okay? I'm not telling you what's true. I'm just raising questions and possibilities about what's really going on. Okay? And also, like, I don't know what they did in Egypt 5,000 years ago. I'm just speculating. It's just a theory. It's a nice theory, but I have no evidence that it's true. Okay? This is a disclaimer. Take what I say with a grain of salt. Be skeptical and doubtful of what I say. All right? Okay, any more questions? Okay, great. Okay, so I'll see you guys next class.